Thank you so much, Dr. Adeyemi. Good to be here. Good day, everyone. Greetings from here in Nigeria. Um, we're going to be talking briefly about developing funding proposals. And I'm excited that we had the first session already. So it makes my job a lot easier. Quickly, I will be making a few assumptions. The first assumption is that you have written proposals in the past, won some. You had written proposals before, and then you won some, you lost some. So what we are going to be doing is to try to share some insights, what is expected of us while developing funding proposals. Broadly, we're going to improve our understanding on basic concepts and contemporary approaches to proposal development for fundraising. You could develop a proposal to inform, but this one in particular is to raise funds. And then you want to understand donor types. You see one of the respondents earlier said, I want to know what are donor types, and then interest and compliance requirements. Then we are going to quickly illustrate the project grant management cycle and strategies for building a sustainable and credible donor architecture. You don't just want to get your funding for the first time or for the second time. You also want to be able to retain your donors and expand your funding base for the strategic objective of your organization. So basically, we're going to talk a bit about that. But this is the reality. And the reality is that the environment for fundraising is becoming more competitive. So you'll see that, and again, I like what Robertson said, how does my proposal stand out? There's a lot of competition because there are global economic realities impacting the donor pot is shrinking, and then donor priorities are shifting. Recently, the Israel Palestine saga, of course, you expect some kind of interventions. Donor priorities in those countries will definitely shift to emergency response and the humanitarian imperative. So you see all of those are very exigent. That is the reality. We are in a competition when you write a proposal. So you're going to be competing with 1,001 other organizations or individuals. So where does innovation come in as you write your own proposal? But what does this mean really? Donors have interests and priorities. So if your interest, the interest of your organization does not align with that of the donor, trust me, you can attract their funds. That's one thing. The second thing is that donors have existing grantees they work with. So what will you do differently to either be part of those grantees or kick out the existing grantees to be able to be the new grantee for that donor? Because of course, not all grantees have met the donor requirements broadly, and they want to, look for other possible partners to implement in tandem with their compliance requirements. What that means also is that there are donors have guidelines and compliance, just like I said, and then the donors also demand accountability for all funds. Later in the slide, we'll be talking about the value for money principles and how that helps you retain your donor in terms of achieving your organizational objectives. So the bottom line of all I've said is that donors are like brides. So you need to woo them convincingly. And later, this will be a puzzle. I'd like you to look out for the full meaning of woo, not the literal meaning, the contextual meaning of woo in this slide. Donors are brides. You need to woo them convincingly. So, but let's try and understand some basic concepts because these concepts are quite important and approaches to developing your proposal. And the first thing I want us to understand, maybe you have you know about this in the past, but let's just remind ourselves resource mobilization versus fundraising. What really does this mean? Actually, the concepts are, are different. Like one of us said, one is deeper than the other, and I'm going to espouse that in a jiffy. So when you talk about resource mobilization, you are talking about the broader resources required for achieving your organizational objectives. So it involves the process of management, relationship building, and networking. It involves both in-kind and cash required to achieve your organizational objectives. So resource mobilization is broader. It's not just funds. And in a jiffy, you are going to see what I term the 4G framework. There are 4 key things in resource mobilization. Fundraising is just one strand of that. The first thing is you mobilize your physical resources. Somehow we do not quantify most times when we mobilize, have our physical structures, raw materials, machines, even buildings, laptops. Those are physical resources that are required to be mobilized. The second one is human resources. Now you need to employ staff. The capacity and experience of your staff will determine the extent to which you can win that proposal. Demonstrably, ability to demonstrate to the donor convincingly that you have systems and structures that can manage a grant, the human resource. The fourth one is the intellectual resources. Here you are talking about non-physical and intangible business resources like patents, like brands, like copyright, like your logo. You know, those are intellectual resources. I'm sure not any other person cannot use ASWE logo. I'm not sure Dr. Adeyemi is going to sue that person. You know, so there are, those are intellectual resources. And the last one, and why we are here, is financial resources. So you see that resource mobilization is broader, just providing some basic concepts. So you have the 4 areas: the physical, financial, human, and intellectual. And for this conversation, we're only focusing on one strand of resource mobilization, which is fundraising. And fundraising basically is how we solicit financial support, an essential way for an organization to bring revenue to achieving their mission. Now we have talked about mission and then the vision, right? So fundraising is strictly about talking about the money. How do we get funds to come in? What strategies do we deploy? So, but fundraising is just one strand of resource mobilization. Trust me, even if you have the required funds, if you have a very bad staff mix with limited capacity, non-trainable staffing structure, inadequate systems that can sustain the funds you have attracted, you will lose that fund. So it's a broader conversation than just raising the fund. Now that you have the fund, so what? The question is, so what? Donors, recall, demand accountability. Donors are also having shrinking donor pots because the funds are not always there. Now that we understand the difference between fundraising and resource mobilization, can we talk a bit about our organizational vision, mission, and values, and how that helps us to attract donors? Recall from the outset, we had said that donors have interests and priorities. Now, if your interest is not aligned with that of the donor, definitely you cannot attract funding from that donor. And I'm going to speak from 2 prisms in this conversation. One from the lens of the non-governmental, not-for-profit organization, and then from the lens of the corporate entities that are for profit, because it's a mix of both. So in case, yes, we know we are social enterprises that are here and a bit of non-governmental organization, but how is your organization vision and mission crafted? So if your vision, for instance, our mission is to raise the next generation of Africa tech and eco-friendly leaders with virtue and skills to lead and build for the future through hands-on in demanding training. Okay, if I'm going to put on my partner assessment thinking cap, if I come to organization from an OCA, organizational capacity assessment, I'm going to be a bit skeptical about your mission because it's broad and not very specific to what a donor can fund. It's heavy on building a generation of what it's leading. So a vision and mission statement needs to be smart. That's not the conversation for today, but it's something that you could review and then see how that aligns. Because if a donor does not clearly understand your vision and mission, then it's a bit of challenge. Mission to shape the development of social enterprise capacities and ecosystem in Africa. Smart, straight on. Now, the question is, which of the donors will be interested to fund this mission statement in Africa? We want to shape social enterprises capacities. Beyond capacities, because capacities, again, also has several components. Beyond capacity, the question mark here is capacity for what? It still has that question in this. Now, the bottom line of why we are saying all of this is because, one, your vision is tied to the donors funding support that can be attracted. If your vision does not align with that of a donor, they can't fund it, unfortunately. So if you are focused on women and youth, and then the donor is interested to fund men and young children, then definitely you can attract funding from that donor. The next one is fundraising drive is dependent on your organizational systems. Donors will come for organizational capacity assessment, systems in terms of governance and leadership structure, financial systems, procurement system, your staff means and capability. When they come for such assessment, they are going to be looking out for those policies in place, processes, the procedures that helps them justify why that money should be given to you. Again, fundraising drives must align with strategic donor priorities. So I've stated all of those, and it's important. But in terms of who a donor is, someone who is willing to give you, literal meaning, especially money to charity. Donor can be development agencies, corporate organizations, high net worth individuals. There is a 4-person rule to getting what you want. I don't know if anyone has read about that. It means that you already know someone that knows another person, and that a 4th person that can get you to achieve your results. You already have that person on your network. But let's move on quickly. Types of donors. I know you've talked about this in the past, but we're stating all of this so that it leads us clearly to when you are writing a proposal, for instance, to an institutional donor or a corporate entity or high net worth individuals or even government. There are instances where there are no cases of conflict of interest. You can even attract funding from government. Government can invite you to say, we know that we don't have the capacity to drive this. We have some funds for this. Can you drive it and account to us? There are possibilities. So the kind of proposal I'm going to write to an institutional donor definitely will be different from the corporate entity or high net worth individuals or government. So we need to have that clear understanding. And while institutional donor requirement may be a bit very stringent, that of corporate organization or high net worth individual may be a bit flexible, and we'll see in a jiffy. Now, there are types of funds. One I have called restricted fund, and the other non-restricted funding sources. Now, for your restricted funding sources, the donors define what you should do. So donor can say, I want to reach 10,000 women in Africa for livelihood support. From 10,000 women, 3,000 must be women with disabilities. You see, donor is defining what they want you to do with the funds. If you do not have experience engaging that space in the past, you cannot win funds from that donor. It is restricted. They have clearly their priorities and what they want you to achieve. Now, the other component of it is a non-restricted funding sources. Those are other avenues, innovative and creative ways where you can raise funds and not solely depend on donors, institutional donors, I mean, in quote. Now, for institutional donors, the funding are limited to their priorities and interests. It doesn't give you an ambience to say, oh, there's an emergency response in South Africa. Can I use this pool of funds from a non-restricted funding source to quickly respond to that emergency? For donors, some restricted donor, institutional donors will tell you, no, you can't use our funds for that. So we're going to be looking at some of the restricted funding sources. You have the institutional donors, like the FCDO. FCDO is Foreign Commonwealth Development Office. These are institutional partners. USAID, European Union. USAID is United States Agency for International Development. You have European Union, you have Global Affairs Canada, you have Ford Foundation, you have Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, you have a whole lot of donors, Makato Foundation. In Nigeria, you have T.Y. Danjuma Fund, a whole lot of donors, but they define what they want you to achieve. Another set of restricted donor funding is from trusts and foundations. I mentioned those already. Interestingly, some CSR, corporate social responsibility funding sources can also be restricted. They could tell you, because their interest is, we want to improve our brand visibility, we want to improve our customer base. So if I'm going to give you funds as anyone, a bank in your country that is happy, a corporate entity that wants to fund your support your intervention, you would see their interest would be to increase their brand visibility and then their customer base, even if they want to contribute, of course, give back to society. Restricted funding sources. The other one is non-restricted, and this is what I encourage a lot of organizations to try explore as much, because it gives you more opportunities to demonstrate capacity to manage grants when you are attracting institutional donors. So for instance, if I have a high net worth individual give me 10 million naira or dollars or pounds or yen or euro and the currencies that we may have, and then I can use that funds to demonstrate capacity to attract a donor fund. So like I said, there's corporate fundraising, unrestricted, crowdfunding. Donors, for instance, check us out on the website. We can use our website to crowdfund. You have a space on your website where you can put, this is what we are doing. We are supporting 1,000 children in rural communities. So far, we have been able to mobilize resources that can support 200 of that 1,000. We still have a funding gap for 800. This is what you will be surprised who will be happy to go to your site to provide that kind of support that can help you raise those funds. Events fundraising. I like one of the organizations online now into tech. I suppose you could organize a tech fair, provide some services that people will be interested to come. There was a time in the country that I had supported an event fundraising for an art fair. We called it art fair in Nigeria, where you brought series of community artifact, mentifact, graphic designs, and people came, for very interesting amounts, and they were even willing to donate much more, because the purpose for that was not really to raise funds for the organization, but to meet a specific need at that time. So we're able to say we wanted to send 50 children to school, but people have donated this art work to us free of charge, but we want to give them back at some fund. The funds will be used for ABC. So you could organize event fundraising. There's also investment fundraising, land banking, property acquisition. Now the question is, if you don't have the stake of funds, where do you get the fund to land bank? You know, you buy a land now, and in 1 or 2 years, it appreciates, and then you can use that fund to continue to drive your organizational vision. Another one is product auctions. For some of the organizations that are into products, you can do all of that. Financial instruments, shares, bonds, treasury bills, those are and then the last one, social enterprise leveraging. I must say that this list is not exhaustive. There are just some unrestricted funding sources that you can use to gain, pull out some funds to also demonstrate a result. But let's go straight into proposal development. Now that we understand the donor types, now that we understand some of the opportunities that exist for restricted and non-restricted funding source, we're going to be speaking from the lens of, if I am writing a proposal to an institutional donor, what should I be looking out for? If I am writing to corporates, entities, high net worth individuals, and the last strand, what should I be looking out for? So the first thing, I don't want to go into these details. What is a proposal? It's just putting someone's, stating something for consideration, a written pitch on a given subject for fundraising. That's just basically literal meaning of a proposal. But trust me, a group proposal requires a lot of forethought, a lot of thinking, understanding of your audience, your donor, and creative writing to persuade your reader or donor. Remember, donors are brides. You need to be able to demonstrate convincingly that you have the capacity to manage and implement that intervention. So a group proposal has a lot of thinking. But there is a donor management grant cycle, which is something we need to understand basically. And this is from the prism of institutional donors. Remember, I said I was going to speak from the lens of institutional donors, corporates, and high net worth individuals. So this is a grant cycle, management cycle for institutional donors. Initiation stage, project design phase, implementation phase, closure. All stages of this cycle are as important as every stage that you find on this cycle. So at the initiation stage, you do a lot of opportunity scanning, understanding the call. Is it a single stage proposal or multi-stage proposal? Sorry, we're coming now to the details. Single stage proposals, multi-stage proposal. Are you taking a go or no go decision on that proposal? What that means is, do we meet the requirement? Some donors will say you must pre-finance the project. So some donors, and that's a bit of difference between a grant and a contract. A grant is going to provide the fund, the donor will provide the funds, and then allow you implement and document your retirement and give them account of your expenditures and achieve the result. A contract is a bit different because that will be looking at payments by result, which is more stringent. So you need to understand some of this. If the call you are responding to is commercial contracts, they are bigger. You could have $100 million, euros, pounds, whatever the currency is, but they are more stringent. It means that if you do not achieve the result, you can't get paid. So it will say if you achieve result 1, 2, 3, 4, you would get paid for 1, 2, 3, 4. It's called payment by result, right? You need to understand when you are reviewing the call, you need to understand some of these basics so you understand if you are going to take a go or no go decision. It requires you to pre-finance, For commercial contracts, it requires you to pre-finance. So it means you are going to get some funds, possibly from your non-restricted funding source, to implement the project, demonstrate capacity to the donor before you get paid. It's a bit different from a grant. A grant is going to, you write your proposal, they are going to send you the funds in tranches. They won't send you all the funds at the same time. In tranches, some will do quarterly, some will do biannual. It depends on the donor compliance requirements, and they expect you to implement intervention and then come back to them with your documentation and report. So at that stage, you are going to be reviewing the proposal, the call for proposal, and then you'll be thinking to take a go or no go decision. Of course, I advise every one organization to have a ready capability statement. It is always important. A capability statement is not a company or organizational profile. No, there are two different things entirely. So for a capability statement is always tailored to the requirements of the donor. For instance, if a donor is saying we want to fund, we have some funds to support education in emergency. If your capability statement does not demonstrate that you have implemented projects in the past within education in emergency in humanitarian setting, then trust me, you cannot, even if you apply for that call, it will never be considered, unfortunately. So one of the reasons why you don't win proposals when you apply is because some of these basics, we do not look at them. And then please do not write your proposal alone. Set up a team. Proposal writing is not about, oh, I have an idea what we want to do. Bam, then you pick up your paper or your laptop, you start writing. No, set up a team. Ensure the project expert is part of that team, the leadership in terms of governance, the finance, the M&E, the security expert, whatever the scope of that project is, ensure there is a team, because you are going to do a lot of brainstorming and thinking around the problem you are trying to solve. I'm just going to leave these other phases, project narrative, theory of things we'll talk about, and then implementation and closure. So for this conversation, we are not focusing on implementation and closure. We are only focusing on initiation and project design, right? Because we want to be able to stop at the point of contracting when we have won the proposal. What you do beyond winning your proposal is the implementation and closure, which is also very important to retaining your donors, but I will leave it at that and move on to the next slide. Now, what do you need to do when you engage the donor call? Now you have identified a call for proposal. What do you need to do to engage the call? The first thing, trust me, please don't be tired to read the call at least 4 times. Interestingly, at least 4 times. Don't get too familiar with the donor call and say, oh, we know what is there. No, please read, share with your team. That's why you need to write the proposal with a team. Read the call, read again, take some time off, go read again, and then take another time off, and then read again, at least 4 times. Those are just very important things to do in applying for a call. So if you have an existing call you are trying to apply for, please, if you have only read once or twice, go back and ensure at least 4 times. The next thing you need to do a call summary. Summarize that call. Summarize it in a PowerPoint format. Present it to your team. Present that call. This is the donor requirement. For instance, some people miss out on proposals because they did not adhere to font size. The donor have said, write your proposal with Times New Roman size 12, and then you say, oh no, that would be too small. I can't even read it. So you have decided to use size font 14. Trust me, they are not going to read your proposal. They're just going to do away with your proposal. There are also donors who page limits. They said, submit a 5-page proposal. And then you say, no, how can we submit 5 pages? We have done a lot. in fact, a lot in this space. We need to tell the donor that we can write more than 5 pages, and then you write 80 pages. Trust me, you will never get a response. They're just going to throw it away. Another one is there could be pre-financing requirements, just like I explained for commercial contracts and grants. If you are required to pre-finance, it is important that you know if you have the capacity to take a go or no go decision. Another thing that is important, there are donors that require cost share element. What that means is that they will tell you, you are going to contribute 15% of the entire budget for you to get this grant. If you don't have the capacity for that, do not proceed. Now, when we review, because we're also privileged to have sat on panels where we review proposals. When we review the proposal, one of the secrets, and I like someone who talked about secrets earlier, what we do is that we expect that if, for instance, the issue is on girl-child education, we expect that in your proposal, you should have mentioned girl-child education at least 50 to 100 times. So if I do control find and I type girl child and it only popped up in 2 places, I'm going to throw away your proposal. I'm not going to continue reading it because trust me, I have 1,000 other proposals to review. And then I come to your proposal and I see font size 14. I will not proceed reading it. I'm going to throw it away. Apologies for using those words because I'm thinking like a proposal reviewer, because time wasting, you have not complied with our core requirements. You may have missed very important details in that call. I like to go faster now. Now, understanding, is this a single stage proposal? What that means is that the donor is saying, submit your full proposal, including your narrative, your budget and budget notes, your activity schedule, risk and mitigation framework, meal plan, your monetary evaluation, accountability and learning plan, all of those documents, submit it at a go. Some donors do not require that. It is multi-stage, and they are going to tell you first to submit an expression of interest, EOI, because they want to be able to sieve the number of proposals they will be reviewing. Some donors will say, submit an expression of interest, and then they are going to reduce 10,000 to 5,000. And then they will come back to 5,000 and say, submit concept note. A concept note is a brief summary of the entire project you try to implement. And then they are going to sieve again and then just reduce to 10 organizations with very strong concept notes. And they will say, now submit the full proposal. So donors do all of this to reduce the number of proposals. So you need to understand, is this called multi-stage or single stage? If it is single stage, you just have no other time to make right the wrong. Because if it is full proposal and you have submitted, you have submitted. If it is expression of interest, you can submit. If you are lucky to move to the next stage, you can correct some of those things you forgot to include and then include it in your concept note. And then some innovations could come in. You could also improve your full proposal. So we go on. Other requirements, some donors require some registrations. Submissions are online. So for European Union, you must have registered on PADO. For USAID, there's DUN, SAM, cage code that is required. Broadly, for us in the context in Nigeria, we have the Corporate Affairs Commission. That is the legal instrument for NGOs to operate or for entities to operate in their country. I don't know, for instance, what it is in Zambia or Ghana or South Africa, but there's that clause. And then there's the anti-fraud registration certificate that's also required, because now donors are very skeptical for organizations to use their funds in very fraudulent ways. And then tax compliance and audit requirement. There are much more requirements, depends on the donor call. So now that we have summarized the call, what is the problem you are trying to solve? If you get it wrong at this stage, you will never get it right to convince the donor. And I'm going to tell you why. So the problem you are trying to solve needs to be well researched, well analyzed, well discussed through a very detailed brainstorming session, and there are tools to use for understanding the problem. One of such tools is what we call the problem tree and solution tree analysis. Now, this problem tree analysis is called the cause and effect analysis. So if I'm going to put, can someone identify a problem, for instance, you want to solve that we can put in the trunk? I'm going to tell you how this tool works. Anyone, you can just put in the chat box, girl child education or early child marriage or any problem at all you want to put there. I'm not reading anyone yet. Okay, lack of ECD services, water, okay, decongestion of prison. Okay, for instance, let's pick decongestion of prison. But decongestion of prison has been written in a solution format. So let us twig it into a problem. Congested prisons in Africa. That's the problem. So I'm going to put that problem in the trunk of the tree. So I'm going to try and ask the why questions. Why is the prison congested? Can somebody put in why? Let's make it a bit practical now, because I expect that you would be able to do this later. Why are the prisons? Why do you think the prisons are congested? Why? I'm going to just wait to read any feedback on that. You can see that the depth, the root of that tree is broad. So it means there will be multiple, maybe high rate of crimes, okay, high rate of crime, slow court procedures, excellent. Okay, let's try and deepen corruption in justice system. Thank you. Prisons are congested due to minor offenders, lack of reps. Excellent. So let's pick two of this that you have identified. So someone has written increased crime rate, right? High crime rate. Why? So this route, to get to the root, you need to be asking the why question. Why is there high crime rate? Let's pick high crime rate, for instance. Can we deepen that? Why is there high crime rate? Why is there high crime rate? Is it related to poverty, wrong penalty? Okay, unemployment, good. So you see, unemployment, poverty, right? One of the reasons why there's high crime, you know, we are just trying to deepen one root of the multiple roots of the problem. Unemployment. So if we try idleness, great. Now, great. Let's start with unemployment. Why is there unemployment in Africa? Why? Why is there unemployment? Why is there unemployment? So you could talk about lack of illiteracy, like someone said, poor education system, poor leadership. Can you see how it connects low resources? And then you continue to deepen. I'm just trying to put you through how the problem tree and solution tree analysis works, because if you do not do a problem tree analysis, do not start writing your proposal. This is a tool that works well, and donors are aware. And when they read your proposal, they will know straight away if you have done a detailed problem tree analysis or solution tree analysis or not. This is far different from a needs assessment. Very different, right? Because the consequences, the effect of unemployment will not just be high crime rate, it will be youth restiveness, it will be high rates of drug usage of drugs, you know, because people mental health is now a challenge, people take into crime. So you will see a lot of consequence in the society. Now, what you do with your consequences, the root problem, the root of the problem is that you use that session in your proposal to demonstrate the magnitude of the problem. So you can say in your proposal, the human rights, you know, now you are trying to write a proposal. You can say globally, statistics have shown that there are over 1 million young people between ages 12 to ages 15 to 18 who are in prison in Africa. For instance, I'm just saying the issues are not far-fetched because there's increased unemployment rates and blah, blah, blah. There's lack of parental care, values are depleting, blah. You are now using that to show the magnitude and why. It's also what you write in your proposal to demonstrate the rationale why the donor needs to fund you, right? Now, the consequences of that will also help you further deepen the magnitude of the problem and why the donor needs to support that intervention to address that issue. So this is it. Now, when you begin to deepen your problem tree, it has multiple problems, root causes. You will see at some point, when you continue to deepen and deepen, the root cause will begin to triangulate into one or two big root cause. That's if you experiment this at within your own space, you will see that is what happens eventually. So if you continue to ask the why question, the why question, the why question, you will see that the root cause will begin to triangulate in terms of it now becomes going back to same systemic issues, and it clearly tells you the challenges that you need to address of the problem. But then in solution tree analysis, you are now going to put the solution on the trunk and say, prisons in Africa decongested. What will you do to decongest the prisons? What you do will now become the activities that you are going to do to address that problem. The consequences of doing that will now be the outcome. So I'm talking M&E terms now. The outcome of the intervention you are designing, and that is what constitutes your strategic objectives when you are developing your logical framework. We'll get to that in a bit. You know, the Pareto analysis is also good, but the problem tree analysis is good practice to writing an institutional donor proposal. So we proceed. Now, talking about your logical framework, I haven't done that. The donor wants to see why it is called logical framework. Is simple. One is going to say, this is the problem I'm trying to address. If I do A and B and C with the assumption that there will be E and F, then I will eradicate this problem. I'm going to take that again. Logical frameworks is a tool for improving planning implementation, but basically it's going to say, if I do A and B and C with the assumption that there will be E and D and E, then I can achieve the overall goal, right? What you see on the screen now is the results chain for the European Union, for instance. So you will see from activities. Earlier, I told you on the solution tree, the root of it will now be what? The activities that you do to achieve the outcome. The difference between a project, a program, and a portfolio is that projects are time-based, start and finish. Programs are longer time with multiple projects. So the HIV and AIDS program or the polio program in Africa did not just happen with one project. No, that's why not one organization can achieve impact. One intervention or project can achieve outcome, but not impact. Impact is more long-term and can be wide range. But let's come to practical of it. The solution you are going to get eventually will constitute your strategic objectives. So the first thing will be, if I raise awareness and campaign, I can say one of the strategic objectives will be to increase awareness on the dangers of crime in Africa. Maybe that is one strategic objective. What will I do in terms of activities to increase awareness? I'm going to leverage social media. I'm going to leverage social behavioral change actions. I'm going to use IEC materials, information, education, and communication materials. I'm going to do role plays in communities. I'm going to do town hall meetings. I'm going to do all of that to achieve the overall goal for increased awareness on the dangers of crime rates. So we'll just proceed. So another thing that is important is your theory of change. Donors are interested to know, how will this change happen? You have identified a problem. Donors want to know, how will this change happen? And in a theory of change, it's a if-then analysis. That's what we call this. So if we say, if these results are delivered and assumptions hold true, then the project purpose will be achieved. So let me put it in context. If the government is willing to support, let me tweak it a bit. If young girls are willing to go to school and government is willing to provide security for young girls in school, then the rate of retention of girls and graduation will be increased. Can you see how a theory of change is crafted? Some theory of change are not in narrative format, but it's always in a if-then a propositional format. Donors are interested to see your theory of change. And if your theory of change is not in alignment with your logical framework, trust me, your proposal will be taken up. Practically, this project is looking at increasing the number of grade 5 and 6 primary students continuing to higher school. Now, this is a theory of change. One interesting thing about theory of change is that there will be indicators to show that you are going to achieve your result. Indicators are just milestones. I want to have a PhD. My first indicator should be, do I qualify to apply for a PhD? My second indicator could be, have I even bought my form to apply for a PhD? My third indicator could be, have I identified the school to even apply for my PhD? You know, indicators are just milestones that shows that you are going to achieve the result. So if you look at this, you will see that the activities, outputs, outcomes, goal. These are monitoring and evaluation terms that shows that when you do an activities, we run 5 summer reading camps. Recall that our goal is 10% increase in the number of grade 5 to 6 primary school students continuing to higher school. It means the problem we identified from get-go was that the retention and graduation rate of grade 5 and 6 was very low, right? So the activities we needed to do is to run summer readings to help them improve their capacity. And then we also supported 5 to 6 grade students with low reading capacity and then improve their reading proficiency. And then if we do all of that, we can achieve 10% increase in graduation rate. But there will be some assumptions. Our assumptions will include that reading parents of children with low reading proficiencies are even willing to send their children to those camps in the first place. Because if they are not willing, we cannot support the children in the camps. Children are also willing to apply what they learned in summer camps and all of. Now, we're getting into basics. All of this need to connect when you are writing your proposal. It's more holistic. And this is within the context of institutional donors. We are here to talk about corporates. We are here to talk about high net worth individuals. But trust me, if you get it right at this level, trust me, you can apply for any proposal at any level. But let's proceed. Another also very important component of your proposal is your budget. This is very important, and it has several components, including the activity cost, admin cost, personnel, overhead costs, and what have you. Now, there is a component of this that we will talk about in a jiffy, which helps your organization sustain and helps you eschew creative accounting. I beg you quite well, do not do creative accounting. Donors will blacklist you. What creative accounting means is some organizations will negotiate the procurement process to save some funds. for the organization. That is fraud. That is criminal. That is thievery. Permit me to use such colloquial words. That is quite criminal. And donors talk to themselves. They would find out and they would blacklist your organization. So for your project budget, you need to adhere strictly to donor budget considerations. The first one, is it allocable? Is it allocable? This is very related to, for instance, the USAID. Allocability means that was it in your budget in the first place? Did you budget for what you want to expend in your proposal, right? Was it there? If what you budgeted for was to train 10 women and girls, and you never budgeted to train 500 men somewhere else, it means it's not allocable, right? The second component of budget consideration is it allowable? For instance, can you use donor fund to buy alcohol for a stakeholder that wants to help you achieve a result? Is it allowable? No, you cannot use donor funds, for instance, to buy yourself a car or to go and get married to a new wife or husband, or to use donor funds to build a house for yourself and then enjoy it. It's not allowable. The other one is not, if your budget is not reasonable. Reasonability also relates to value for money principle. So for instance, if everyone knows that a cost of bottled water or table water is 500 pounds or euros or dollars or naira, and then that is the ideal market rate, and then you put in your budget 50,000 naira, pounds, euros, dollars, or whatever currency for one bottle of table water, then that is not reasonable. It's above the cost. So, and then in terms of value for money principle, how return of reinvestment situate within this context. But we'll proceed. Value for money principles actually talks about the 4 E's: economy, equity, efficiency, and effectiveness. That's what the value for money. The donors will be looking out for these principles in your budget: economy, efficiency, effectiveness, equity, which is very, very important for some donors. So we would go to that in more details in the next slide. But again, for your budget consideration, donors always take GESI into consideration. GESI is gender, equity, disability, and social inclusion. So I was talking about, does your budget take into consideration GESI? GESI is gender, equity, disability, and social inclusion. Before now, it used to be GESI, GESI, but now the UNCRPD and its protocol has now integrated disability and social inclusion, because disability inclusion has been silent in GESI, focusing more on gender, youth, possibly children. For disability inclusion, the clear understanding of the strands of disability clusters, not a lot of people know that. But I'm going to proceed. The big caveat is that do not forget to include some form of budget note for every budget item that you put on your budget. It is very important. Again, ensure to cost recover. I can do another whole lot of couple of hours on cost recovery. There is above the line cost recovery and below the line. This is where donors are aware that you do not want to do creative accounting. Donors are aware, or criminal accounting, as we have agreed now, because they give you an admin fee. It's different from the salary. This admin fee is just to help your organization sustain. Some donors give you up to 7% of the entire budget. But if you do not know and you do not include it in your budget, donors will also be silent. It's not sacrosanct. For instance, for USAID, it's now called NPAC, non-project attributable cost, NPAC, because NPAC, Donors allow you to do anything with your admin fee. They don't question you on it. They help you. You can use it for anything. But because of issues of funding terrorism, some donors are now deliberate to say, we want to see what you do with the admin fee. And I've just listed that there. Earlier, we're talking about the value for money principle. You will see how that relates to your input, activities, output, outcome, and impact, right? Economy, or we talk about the way you are be able to show some level of candor in your budget, in your budgeting, as it relates to efficiency and effectiveness. Is your budget cost efficient in terms of overhead versus the activity? Some donor will have a funding mix of 70-30%. Some donors will say, for our budget, you must have 80% for activities and 20% for overheads and admin, right? But if your overheads and admin is 60% and activity is just 40%, the donor will throw it off and they will not fund you. They won't even invite you for conversation. Well, some donors may, if your proposal is really, really innovative and interesting, they will invite you for negotiation of your budget. But these are the principles which are quite important. So the question is, will I rather be efficient or effective? So what does effectiveness mean within this context and efficiency? If I were to choose one, would I be efficient or effective? It's it's a rhetorical question, but for ideally, we should be both efficient and effective in our budgeting. Let's move on really fast now. Now, you have developed all the documents required to submit your proposal. Please read your proposal over and over again. Bring out the call for proposal, the requirements, and then juxtapose with what you have written. They have said, oh, ensure you use 12 font size, Times New Roman. Did you use it? Ensure you have a pre-financing. All the requirements of the donor, see that your proposal have complied with all the requirements. If it doesn't comply, don't submit because they are not going to review your proposal. The next one is ensure to meet donor submission deadlines. It's high risk for you to try to submit your proposal on the deadline, the date for submission. It's high risk because 1,001 other organizations might be trying to submit, and there will be clustering of the internet space, and then you can't submit. It will be so painful to you. So again, some donors require online submission, others require physical submission, others even require you put them on soft hard drives, CD-ROMs, and all of that to submit your proposal. Whatever way your proposal go, either you win or you lose the proposal, always ask for a feedback meeting. Always. Some donors will not respond to you, but when you ask for a feedback meeting, the donor is going to tell you how you can write the proposal differently the next time. So always ask for it. If you win the proposal, good, you are going to have an inception meeting and project launch that helps you ask all the critical questions. If you have lost the proposal, ask for a feedback meeting so that you can do it differently the next time, right? And then when you ask for a feedback meeting, also ensure you document that process so that it helps you to improve in terms of institutional strengthening. We are rounding off in a jiffy. I'm just going to glide through other slides. Building a sustainable and credible donor architecture and funding base, you need to program well, spend the money, and achieve results. Donors are not excited about organizations that don't spend the money. Spending the money within AAR limits. Who knows, who remembers what AAR is? AAR. Who remembers AAR. You can unmute yourself and say it if you remember AAR limits. AAR, is it allocable? Is it allowable? Is it reasonable? That's AAR. Recall earlier, we also talked about that donors are darlings. This, you need to look out for windows of opportunities. That's the woo. You need to woo your donors. You need to look out for windows of opportunity. And I'll tell you in a jiffy how you do that. Write quality proposals, ask for help. Don't be too, you can write a consultant into your proposal. Engage a consultant. They can help you. Trust me. I know some big organizations that even fly in expatriates to write a proposal. You are in competition with such organizations. Join a consortium to apply for funding opportunities. So if your organization have a strength in one area and the call requires strength in others, join an organization that has that. Get children to demonstrate, follow up on the proposals, keep formal and informal relationships. Informal relationships to the extent that, so for instance, you have an existing donor and you know your donor loves to see the beach. You can invite them to say, oh, can we go to the beach? Those are things that help you build your donor relationship. Send publications, either unsolicited, attend cluster meeting, be active on social media, and particularly your website. Donors check you out. If you send me your profile, I'm going to go on the website to see what you have been doing, be accountable and deliver, and all of that. How do you identify windows of opportunities? Research the core. From your existing intervention, can you begin to identify opportunity? The solution to problem approach, what that means is that for every solution you have created, there's a new problem. How do you use that new problem to seek funding support? And then innovative and strategic thinking, partnerships and collaboration, consortia approach. We have talked about that earlier. Now, this is a basic structure for institutional donors proposal format and that of corporate. Now, for corporate entities, it's a bit flexible, and that's why we did not dwell so much on corporate. It's a bit flexible because they want to give back to society. Two things they would like to achieve: brand visibility and then increase customer base. You know, they are for profit, right? So for corporates, they are a bit more, for instance, a bank, well, they want to say, oh, we have been receiving funds for this from, can we increase our customer base? Can we support an intervention? Is different. For institutional donors, these are also the guide, but I won't go through in details. But for institutional donors, these core documents are important. Your narrative that shows the project background, justification, and all of this comes from your problem tree analysis, and then your activities, your budget no logical framework, activity schedule. The activity schedule is a Gantt chart that shows when an activity is going to happen, what month, and all of that over a 3-4 year period, depending on the number of years. Risk and mitigation plan, your meal plan. Meal is monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning plan. It's also very expedient. A fundraising plan, I advise and encourage us all to develop a fundraising plan. This is just some of the sessions that you should have in your fundraising plan, because donors also ask you for this document, particularly your capability statement and your past achievements. Retaining your donors, 3 things are important for you to do. Keep your donors informed, keep your donors satisfied, keep your donors visible. Donors like visibility. Keep them visible. If they are not satisfied, if you are not informing them, if they are not visible, trust me, you will not get the next funds. These are some possible sites you could go to. I know we have several. I just pulled out a few of them for possible ongoing live calls. We are happy to support you. If you have a proposal you want us to look at, of course, we'll coordinate with Dr. Adeyemi and team and see how we can support you with that. But I'd like you to take this assignment as your take home for your organization. Within your own mission, vision, and strategic objective, what are the funding opportunities you think exist for your organizations? Two, who are the donors that can be linked to each of these funding areas? Try and map out those donors and say, oh, this is a donor that could be interested to fund what we are doing. And number three, how do you engage these donors and how do you increase your chances of getting funding to work with them? Thank you for listening. It's great speaking with all of you. Thank you. Thank you for your time.